Right, guys, welcome back to our second video where he's on my bench. I'm Rezo. I was about to say I'm Tom. I'm Rezo. Tom, do you want to go?
Rezo, I'm Tom.
No, me not.
And we're going to be dissecting Fantasy Premier League today, talking about advanced tips and tricks, what you should be doing and what you should be avoiding. Right, so how we're going to start is we're going to talk about how we assemble our teams, and then we're going to get into the sort of things that to really look out for. I'll go first. Oh, wait. Make sure you subscribe, like, comment, follow us on Twitter, DM us, whatever you want. So the way I assemble my team is it's like shopping, except the opposite. I go most expensive first. So I'll fill out my team with players that I will want in my team for the entire season. Your Aubameyangs, De Bruyne's, Salah's, Trent's, Aguero's, and I will pick those 2-3 players that I think will be mainstays and that will do well throughout the season. So currently I've got Currently I've got Aubameyang, got Jimenez, and I've also got KDB. Now that's subject to change. I always do my teams really late, but that's what I tend to do. I'll take a big chunk out of my 100 million budget, and then I will either find differentials or duds. And by duds, I mean players that are 4 million or the very lowest value for fantasy football that won't play, or I will find the minimum, your bargain buckets, which we'll talk about in our next video. Don't worry. Players that are super cheap, but that will play and that will get you, your 2 points or whatever. That can fill in if one of your stars is a rotation risk. So yeah, that's how I do it. What about yourself, Tom?
On the note of, I think cheap is the key word for Tom.
Here we go. I do it the other way around. I'm the polar opposite. I am king of the bargain bucket. And when I see that blank. One of my favorite things in fantasy is when you start it over in September and you get that blank 15 people, 100 mil budget. And here's what I do, guys. I go price and I go right down to the bottom. And I always look for, maybe not goalkeepers, but you look at defenders, you look at midfielders, and you look at forwards. And it's really important to do this. And you say, who of these terrible players are going to play? Who is actually going to get on the pitch? And who is going to give me points? Who would I not mind having in my squad? And that's how I build my squad. It's a bit like building a house. You've got to have good foundations. You need your £4 million players and you need your £4.5 million players because that's where the value are. Everyone has Mo Salah in their team. Everyone has Kevin De Bruyne in their team.
Yeah, I do.
But £4 million players are the way that you're going to get ahead in fantasy football. So when we do our next video about bargain buckets, that is where the points come from. And that is where I think it makes the difference between average fantasy football players and the better fantasy football players. It's so important to have 12, 13, 14 players that are going to play every week. So if you can actually analyze the bargain players and get players. John Lundstrom last year was a bonus, but you're just looking for players who are going to get on the pitch and who are going to get you points. So That's how I do it. I look at them first because from historical, when you're looking at it and you've filled out maybe 10 of your team, you've got 5 players to go and you've only got £10 million budget, it's impossible to fill out your team. And then you're plugging gaps, taking people out that you don't want to take out. So I do it the other way around. I put all the cheap players in and then I add a bit of the value. I add a sprinkle of spice on top. That's how I do it.
Tim, really, really quickly, a couple of things. Yeah. One, you're building your house on sand. Let's start with
that. given some of them fall through, some of them will never see the light of day, never see the grass.
And two, what is the cheapest 15 that you've ever assembled? That's what I want to know.
This one, I get one, maybe not this one, but my first draft of this season, I put together all of my back four, which is really exciting for the next video, and I think for fantasy, all of my back four, I put Trent, who's a god amongst men, and I put 4 defenders who were 4 million to 4.5 million. So I spent bargain, and then I put maybe another really, really 2 cheap midfielders. So I think I had 3 million left over.
That's nuts.
Yeah.
That's actually crazy. Umar, what about you? Please don't tell me you follow this guy's method.
Yeah, I'm happy to say I do the absolute opposite of him. So the bargain bucket people, whilst I do agree there is some importance, you do need to get the ones that do play. That's definitely a bonus. I'd say that's an extra 2 points. I wouldn't say it's anything more than that. But yeah,
you got to get the right players, mate. 6 points. 6 points, not 2.
I'm looking forward to your 6 points, 4 million players. So in terms of how I pick, I like to go with the big teams. So generally, I try and pick players in the top 6. I think they score the most goals, and they will get the most. Their players will get the most points. It can be quite difficult because those big 6 teams, they tend to rotate more than the other teams. So picking the right players in those teams can be quite difficult. But that seems to, I try and get the starting players from those teams. That's key for me. I try and look in almost, I'd say, about 5 week periods, and hence why I probably make more transfers than your average person. There can be, if I don't, fixtures are key for me. If I don't like this look at the fixtures for my players, then I'm happy to rotate. I tend to keep my premium players the same, but all my mid-price players, they seem to rotate quite a lot. So that's generally how I'll play. And I think, especially at the start of the season, one thing I would say, and I would also advise this to other FPL players, is try and accumulate as much value as you can at the start. Once players start to get expensive, people jump on the bandwagons, it can get quite difficult to afford them later on. So yeah, that's how I play.
Yeah, that's a good point actually about accruing value. Because when you sell, if you sell a player at an odd decimal, so 0.3, you only get half, but they can't give you 1.5, so they lower it. They don't round up.
Yeah.
I don't know what kind of school they went to, but obviously they were taught the wrong thing. So never sell up 0.3, 0.5, 0.7. It's worth holding on to see whether they go up or whether actually they drop down, because you still get back the 1 or the 2. So yeah, right. Enough of what we do. Let's get into the things that you need to start doing. Tim, do you want to talk to them about goalkeepers and defenders and what to do and what not to do?
Yeah, so just very briefly on goalkeepers, because goalkeepers are very narrow and there's not a lot of, there's only really 20 you can pick from. The basic would be make sure you get a starting goalkeeper, because I did see on Reddit the other day somebody asking something along the lines of, I've already got Hennessy, who shall I get as my backup keeper? Whereas Hennessy doesn't play for Crystal Palace. So absolutely make sure you get a starting goalkeeper, because you do not want to use a transfer on a goalkeeper because they're not worthwhile. There are 2 schools of thoughts you can go with goalkeepers. You can go for goalkeepers in sort of your bottom 10 teams because they'll make more saves. Generally, those teams will be on the back foot, so they'll get save points. Yes, they're cheaper. They might concede goals, but they'll also make saves. So that can be a real bonus, and we've seen that in the past with Nick Pope last season, Henderson last season. So it's a definite tried and tested approach. The other approach is to go for more expensive goalkeepers. Generally, I steer clear of the most expensive goalkeepers because there are often cheaper ways into the defence. If you want to get the clean sheet points, you can just go with a cheap centre back compared to you can get cheaper options than Alisson or Edison. So I'd steer clear of those. Me personally, I've got a 4.5 million goalkeeper and a 4 million goalkeeper who isn't going to play. Ideally, you want to get a 4 million who will play, but I don't think there's any out there. I've got McCarthy from Southampton because I think Southampton were massively improved post-lockdown, and I'm quite excited to see how they do. So that's my school of thought on goalkeepers. I'd avoid the really premiums unless you've got flush with cash. In terms of defenders, there's a huge variety. I've always talked about my bargain bucket, which I'm very excited about my bargain bucket. But just as a general, you sort of want to avoid the centre-backs. And that's because fantasy really rewards attacking players. And that goes all the way through the teams, through midfielders. But your left-backs and your right-backs will score the same amount of points as your centre-backs for a clean sheet. So you want players that are going to get forward, who are going to deliver crosses, who are going to score goals. The only reason really you take a centre-back is maybe aerial prowess, so attacking corners. So there are a couple of examples of that, maybe Virgil van Dijk, maybe Adam Webster at Brighton, and maybe you take a centre-back as a cheap way into a defence if you think Joe Gomez last year, if you think maybe Nathan Ake this year into the City defence. But by and large, you want to be sticking to fullbacks who try and get forward, and that's defenders for me.
Yeah, all very good points. I can't wait for this bargain bucket video. I just can't wait.
I could talk for hours about this bargain bucket. It's going to be really trouble to get it into a small vid.
We might just leave you to it. You can just record.
It's a giant bargain bucket.
I'm going to be telling you guys about midfielders, what to do and what not to do. So for midfielders, the key rule is to avoid CDMs. This isn't FIFA. Think about this like Football Manager. Your ball-winning midfielder does not get any love, and they never will. You want to avoid CDMs and you want to avoid CMs. People that keep the ball ticking. Your Kovacic, your Wijnaldums, your Fabinhos. You don't want these players. They don't get goals. They don't get assists. What you want are either the players like Jack Grealish, where the entire team revolves around them, or you want the inside forwards / wingers, whatever you want to call them, like your Aubameyangs, Salahs. At lower teams, you've got your Saint Maximans, you had your Richarlisons, players that can and will get on the ball and run the defense and cause havoc and get assists and goals. What else do you want, really?
Set piece takers, I guess.
Yeah, so the only exception, the major exception player that I can think about for set pieces are two, really, are James Ward-Prowse and Milivojevic. They take set pieces for the teams, your corners, free kicks and penalties. James Ward-Prowse actually took a couple of penalties ahead of Danny Ings at one point. These players, although they play closer to their own goal, because of the set pieces, they are a threat. They will get the assist. I mean, James Ward-Prowse's set pieces were so good, even when he was a youth player, the England senior team were thinking about calling him up just because of that. And that's it, really, for midfielders. Once again, players that attack, players that score, and players that get assists.
Exactly. No, all those things are key. And in terms of strikers, I think strikers are tricky. They'll be trickier this year than any other year, I think. A lot of the guys that were playing as guests inside forwards, such as your Aubameyangs, Rashford, these kind of guys, have now been reclassified in midfielders. So the pool of strikers is quite small. So I think the key with strikers is you want one that starts more often than not. So I don't know, you guys like Danny Ings, Jimenez, these guys. Tony looks like Tony Martial will be a regular. These guys, they will play every week. They'll get you the 2 points, and hopefully they'll get some goals as well. And all those guys mentioned generally will. The exception, maybe Aguero, who doesn't necessarily start all the games, sometimes comes off at 60, but he's so good that he scores whenever he does play. So I think those are the key things. They need to start, more than anything else, they need to score goals.
Yeah, I mean, that's what they're paid for, isn't it?
Exactly.
And there's nothing, I hate it. I fucking hate it when you see Aguero looking at the sideline and you're just worried.
You know. As soon as the clock hits 55 minutes, you begin to worry, especially when you've got the armband on him. It's time. It's always going to be his time, but
I get palpitations. I just think, Pep, allow it. Like, I beg you, this one time, don't be a prick. Like, just please, let my guy play 90. He can play. Yeah. I swear he can play. But yeah, guys, that's us.
Pep must be the most hated man on FPL.
Do you reckon he has a team? Do you reckon that's what it is?
He sees it. He knows. 59 minutes. He sees it. Oh, all these guys with Aguero. You're off, mate.
I reckon he never captains Aguero. That's what it is.
I wonder if this year maybe Frank Lampard will become the new Pep.
Yeah.
Because I think the power of having Pep's squad is it's hard not to bring these quality players on. Chelsea's squad is just ballooned in terms of quality.
Yeah.
Will Frank be able to resist the power of having these talented players on the bench as well?
Yeah.
I know Umar wouldn't be able to.
I wouldn't be able to. Actually, I would.
Increment all the time. We need 5 subs in. We need 5 subs back.
Right, guys. Well, that's it from us. That was He's on My Bench. That was our advanced tips and tricks. What to do and what not to do. Tune in for our next episode. Tom's buzzing. It's the bargain bucket. He can't wait. KFC can't hold a candle to this, man, honestly.
Honestly, lads, like,
The
get
meanest
yourself a
thing.
drink. It could be a long episode. I've got a lot to say about my bargain bucket. These guys are going to rope me down to picking maybe one or two of them, but we could go on and on.
We might just let you do it on your own. Anyway, guys, that's us. Make sure you subscribe, like, comment. If you have any questions whatsoever, let us know on Twitter. We'll get back to you. And follow us on Twitter. We've got plenty more coming.